Hello everyone. I am very happy today, and that is because I am nearly traveling to my dream destination, which is in India. I have actually done something similar to this before, where I visit a famous temple and I go and meditate there for as long as I like, with a lot of freedom in my daily schedule. And the last time I did it, the only time I've done this before, was in Cambodia at a temple complex called Angkor Wat. And every day I would go to one of the sites, maybe two or three as well if there's smaller sites, and I would meditate at the points of the temple that I thought looked interesting. So for instance, if there is a big geometric shape created by the temple, I would go right to the middle of that shape. Or if there's a nice archway, I might go under the archway and meditate and do all sorts of techniques that I like and have experimented with in the past. And this trip to Angkor Wat was really amazing for many reasons. It actually ended on the most epic of notes. I couldn't have dreamt of a more epic way to end that trip. And that is because I was at some or other of the temples, but just as I was leaving on my final day, the sun was starting to set and I was going to go back to my hotel. For the first time, I'd never seen this before in the whole 10 days previously, a wedding was being set up and someone was testing the speakers and they put on the most epic Inception-like type of music, which to me, if there could ever be a sign, was just the most wonderful feeling inside of me, thumping that this whole trip was extremely successful at a very deep level. And those deep levels are hard to express in words, but one thing I can say, and I had also a very interesting experience at the Muladhara chakra, at a particular very run down, quiet, secluded temple at Angkor Wat. There was an interesting experience at the Muladhara, but when I came back home, within a year, I went from working at a corporate job and being very unhappy with where I'm going in life. And then within 1 year, I was financially free. I wasn't rich, but I was financially free. And I was pursuing a life passion of mine that was extremely valuable and worthwhile to me. And I attribute very much that deep change within me to that Angkor Wat temple meditation experience. And that is my goal, again, by going to India, to be totally open-minded, totally flexible, totally open to whatever India has to offer. But I think in general, it's very worthwhile for meditators to go and do their meditation, especially if it's for a long period, at whatever sacred temple or site resonates with you. So in particular, I am planning to go to Chidambaram temple in the south of India in Tamil Nadu. The south of India is nice actually because there's a relatively very big or strong density of different temples that I find interesting. And I can tell you why I am particularly going to Chidambaram temple. There's a few reasons. But first, what I do want to say, as a sort of maybe a question to you or a suggestion, it's a suggestion, but I'd be interested to hear what other people have to say. There's a few people on this YouTube channel that I talk to, subscribers and whatnot, even friends, that like meditation retreats. They're big time meditators and sometimes they go off for 10 days to meditate and do a mindfulness practice, for instance. And that's fantastic. I love doing meditation techniques, and doing it in a very focused manner is great. It's funny to me sometimes, usually, these Westerners call it a meditation retreat, but to me it's funny in my head because when I think of a retreat, I think of a battlefield scenario or a sports scenario, and a retreat sounds like you're losing and stepping back. So I don't have a very good word for it, but to me it feels more like a meditation offensive or a meditation intensive. You are saying that for whatever amount of time. In my particular case, it's going to be 3 weeks. I'm going to be doing a lot of focused meditation. But if you're going to be doing a meditation, as fantastic as it is, those retreats often cost thousands of dollars. So it just seems very like a good thing to me to go and do those meditations at a temple and go do it overseas even. It makes the experience more interesting, more memorable, and you're still doing the same amount of focused practice, but in a very interesting temple-like sacred environment. 100% there's temples that can have a very strong, deep spiritual impact on us, a very holy, sacred impact on us, if you allow it to be so. If you go to a temple and you fully revere that and everything it stands for, then all of that is true to your energy. Okay, so why Chidambaram temple in particular? There's a few reasons. First of all, it was, as they say, created or established by the great yogi Patanjali. He, I would say, is my favorite yogi. Jesus and the Buddha are also up there. Patanjali is generally considered to be a different class of being, in particular a Naga, one of the great Nagas. And he also wrote the Yoga Sutras, which I would say is my favorite book of all time. It's an extremely rich, dense, deep spiritual book, but it's very small, the Yoga Sutras. But every time I read it, something sticks, and for a whole week, I'm contemplating this very deep topic. And it's a fantastic book. I recommend to anyone interested in spirituality to read the translations. Patanjali, he lived thousands of years ago, but it's really, as I've mentioned before on this YouTube channel, I find it so inspiring to see the depths and the sophistication of yogis of the past and what they've written down that lived so long ago, and yet their minds are so sophisticated and we are still learning so much. So I personally really like Patanjali. Also, when I meditate and do 5-MeO malt, I've had quite a few what in India they would call a darshan experience, which is you see and even interact with a deity. Quite often, in India especially, having a darshan is like a claim to fame. If you say you had a darshan of a particular god or goddess, then people immediately take what you say seriously. And that's not at all my intention by saying that. I think that anyone that's engaging with Hinduism, meditating regularly and doing psychedelics, you're almost bound to get a darshan of some kind. And Patanjali is one that comes up a lot for me. And what is associated with him is an extremely strong strength, but it's different. You know, if I put an image of him on screen, I'll try and find the nicest one that I can. He's depicted as having a snake for the lower part of his body. And that snake energy is very interesting because a snake is extremely strong. It's all muscle. But in this particular case, the snake energy is very balanced at the heart. And the snake is also soft. It has a soft underbelly. So it's not like a armored turtle shell strength. It's a very open, tactile type of strength. And it's also very heart-centered and very connected to love. So just the mere fact that Patanjali created this temple does a lot for me. But also, this temple is different than a lot of the other ones that I've heard of in the past. Because whenever I think of it and I'm meditating completely sober, I very often get, I would just call them nearly DMT experiences. And what I mean by that is, in a classic meditation I might have that I would find fulfilling, my mind might go very quiet and become like a river or a stream. But when I think of Chidambaram, something happens in the consciousness that's like a very complex geometric shape, similar to what people report on DMT. And there's very often ribbons of intelligent energy swirling around and conveying all sorts of abstract wisdom or knowledge. And it's extremely different. I, as regular watchers of this YouTube channel know that I like 5-MeO DMT and 5-MeO malt because they connect us straight to the heavenly dimensions. But there's also other dimensions of life, such as the DMT realm, which is this extremely intelligent, complex, geometric realm. And Chidambaram seems to be very strongly connected to that. There's this word in India called a kshetram. This word, this is the true essence of what makes a temple special. It's not the brick and the stone and how it's carved, although those are very impressive, very, very impressive, very, very beautiful. And they are very much a scaffolding to the energy of the temple, if you believe in this sort of thing. And this kshetram, it is like a geometric, sacred space. And if you enter it and engage with that space, intelligence gets conveyed. And it's indeed true, you don't actually need to be at a particular place to engage with the kshetram. So that's just a little bit of an introduction on why I'm so excited about Chidambaram. And I will say that there has been a particular video on YouTube that first caught my attention about this particular place of Chidambaram, and I'll link to that in somewhere below. You can find it because you're smart. So also on this trip, I'm going for 3 weeks, and it's quite exciting to me. I've got a very free schedule. I've got basically a week booked at Chidambaram, but then I'll have 2 more weeks. If I really like Chidambaram, I'll keep staying there. But in the south of India, there's so many exciting places that I would like to go to. One of the most famous sites of all time is called Arunachala Hill. It's where the great sage Ramamaya Rishi also meditated. And in general, it's known as the heart of Shiva. In Hinduism, it's one of the most sacred places. Because I like to be very authentic, I don't have that same sort of deep, vibrant attraction to Arunachala, but Arunachala is very interesting to me because whenever I talk to someone else that's been there, they always have just endless good things to say about it. And Arunachala, the general idea is you walk around the hill, and just that process of walking around is meant to be very spiritually auspicious. There's also many other sites. The Dhyana Linga by the famous Sadhguru is nearby. I could travel there. And Auroville is nearby in Tamil Nadu. And I've heard of many other sites. Just whenever you talk to someone, everyone's got something to recommend to you. So we'll see. It could be funny that I just go to Chidambaram. It's a small town and I just stay there for 3 weeks. Or I could go travel and find another gem that I've never even heard of before. In either way, it's just so exciting to me. And that's really just the purpose of this video, to share my excitement and perhaps to encourage someone, if they do want to do a meditation intensive, consider doing it at a sacred place, if there is such a place, that has an attraction to you. Now, to wrap this topic up also, this temple of Chidambaram, coming back to that, it is dedicated to the Hindu god of Nataraja. Now, you can say a Hindu god, but what that is at a deeper level is it is an artist trying to give expression to a particular aspect of reality. And in this particular case, we're talking about Shiva. Shiva is like the consciousness, the auspicious consciousness of reality. And I work very much with Shiva. I've got a Shiva Lingam over there. And Shiva is fantastic. There's also the Devi aspect to reality. But Nataraja, he is the dancing form of Shiva. And I've got to say, to me, whenever I see the most beautiful of Hindu bras, sculptures of gods, Nataraja is so intricate and so beautiful. He's got flames around him doing fancy poses, and I believe there's actually 108 dancing poses of Nataraja, which are showed at Chidambaram. So Chidambaram is dedicated to this dancing, fiery, vibrant aspect of Shiva. And it's interesting, at the temple, they've got, I believe it's 108 dancing statues of him. They've got a bigger statue of Nataraja, which is the main focus for the average just visitor of the temple. There is also a Shiva Lingam there, which is meant to be very powerful. And then there's also the secret, as they call it, of Chidambaram, which I don't believe is a very well kept secret, but it's still interesting to mention, which is that the real magic or the real essence of Chidambaram is not the statue of Nataraja, it's not even the Shiva Lingam, it's actually the blank wall that is next to the Shiva Lingam. And that's funny, but you've got to remember that Nataraja, consciousness, and Shiva, it's formless. There's no being as such called Nataraja. Nataraja is formless. There's no specific form of it. And Chidambaram, what it actually means, if you translate it, is called the stage of consciousness. So it's empty. It's nothing there, but it's the stage on which this beautiful fiery dance of Nataraja can happen. And as a final closure to this topic, and I'm a symbolic person, I like symbolic gestures, they have an energy and an effectiveness to them. I'm going to unpack this little video set that I've made, and I'm going to leave it just a blank space, just an empty stage. And that is representing the stage of Nataraja. And just this whole topic is so exciting to me. And when I come back, I'll make another video. We'll see how it all pans out. And I'm sure whatever happens, India will be absolutely fantastic. And I'm so excited for this whole experience.